Welcome to Richer Soul, Chris Duncan. It's great to have you join us today.
Yeah, thanks, Rocky. It's nice to meet you, sir.
And I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like
hmm
when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, I grew up in New Zealand, so I once had someone ask me, "Oh, do you know anyone from the South?" And I'm like, "I'm as South as you can go." So from the South of the South, and no, I didn't get much education around money. I mean, I grew up around employees, great upbringing, happy childhood, but when it came to money, it was always trading time to receive money. So there was never enough. You always wanted more. and that was my upbringing, and my understanding of money was that you got a good job, you tried to get paid as much as you could, you worked hard for it, you got time off every year. And for me, I know a lot of people here will be listening in the US, so I lived in a place that's far more socialist, than capitalist. And I didn't really know anyone that had a business, and so it was like I think I was about 11 years old when a family friend of mine, they went and bought a nightclub, and they were the first people I ever knew to own a business. And that was actually what changed my thinking around it. So their family suddenly took off. They got better sports equipment. They moved to a new neighborhood. They went to different schools, and I remember clearly being like, "Why don't we do that, Dad? Like, why don't we go do that? That's seems way better than what we're doing. Like, we're off of it. Like, why can't we do that? That seems great." And that wasn't our journey as a family. We had a different journey, but they really set in my mind. I remember like sweeping the floor as they turned this old factory into a nightclub, and I remember watching it grow, and I remember just sort of seeing it. So it left a really lasting imprint on my mind that it's possible to go start a business and do something different.
And I think that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
The belief that it's possible
Mm,
and seeing that somebody else that you knew did it,
mm,
and that kind of shifts everything. But it's interesting because you live in a country that has a high socialist safety net. Are
mm.
people willing, like, does that safety net still help business owners, or do you kind of have to leave it behind to go do this?
Yeah, I mean, in my country, we're talking about a wealth tax right now, and very, very, very much about ensuring that the little guy doesn't get left behind, rather than allowing people to really get ahead. And so as from a child's perspective, I didn't know that's how it was. But from an adult's perspective, you look at it and you go, "Wow, it's very difficult to be the one, standing out." And I remember I've done a lot of work in the US, and we lived in the United States for a few years, and most of my audience is in the US. And I remember doing seminars in the US, and then going and doing a seminar in Australia, and then in New Zealand. And what's classified as a big business is so funny. And Rocky, you're going to laugh at this. So, a big business, like literally, they say, so a small to medium business is $300,000 to $500,000, and a big business crosses a million. $1 million is a big business. And it's so weird to say that out loud because it sounds so stupid. Like a big business is Apple; it's $1 trillion. And so just the whole mindset around what entrepreneurship is. I actually lived in a town where the state buildings are as well, so it was even more focused on you know working for the government and being even more constricted. So it was really quite it's quite strange for me to be an entrepreneur and to have the businesses I have behind me and those sort of things. It's a very strange thing from where I come from, to have that. So yeah.
Did family and friends try and hold you down when you started your business?
They definitely wanted me to go a more traditional route. Um, I've got really supportive parents. So like my dad was my coach in all my sports, and my mum always backed me. But I did go to university, and I got a degree, and I went and tried the the other model. But It was so shocking that there was really nothing in my mind that would ever let me do that. I went from I had a few little businesses while I was at university. I was a DJ playing some music, and I had a personal training business, and I would go to school and have drinks on a Wednesday, and I had a great time. And then I graduated, and I moved across from Australia to New Zealand. New Zealand to Australia, and I got a job in a big four accounting firm, which is prestigious job. I got the right job. I'm there. And I just remember doing the math, Rocky, and you'll love this. Like I did the math. I said, okay, so out of my 5 days that I'm working here, two of it's going straight to tax. I was like, so Monday, Tuesday, that's tax. Half of Wednesday is used up just to pay to get to the job because I had to get a train in. Then another whole day was accommodation. So that was right through Wednesday and then all of Thursday. And so I realized like I'm only getting, 1 day of this is actually for me. And I just realized, and then I hated it too. I hated sitting there. I had anxiety every single Sunday going into this prestigious job, and so for me, even though family and others didn't really think what I was doing was good, it was like there was no way I was going and doing that. Like, just yeah, you know what I mean? Like it was just in my head that was such a bad life. And it's funny. I don't actually tell this story often. I don't know why it's occurred. I remember finishing the 3 or 4 months internship that they had for me, and they said, "Oh, Chris, you've done so well. We're going to offer you a job." And this guy gave it to me, right? He sits me down, and he's so excited because he's basically saying, "You're going to have what I have," and he goes, "You know, 10 years you'll be in a position like me, Chris." And he showed me his boat, and he showed me, these pictures, and I just saw him. He was like fat. He was like not enjoying his life. He was all these things, and I literally just judged him because there I was, a 22-year-old or whatever, full of energy, full of excitement, wanting to do things. And here's this guy going, "Yeah, you can have this stable, boring thing." And I'm not super proud of it, but I mean, I told him basically that he could, he could have his job, and I'll figure out something else. And I remember leaving and walking from there, and he goes, "You're going to regret this, son." And I just remember these words ringing through, "You're going to regret this." So, look, family didn't really hold me back because there wasn't really a question, if that makes sense. It wasn't like I was ever questioning it. It was like, there's no way I can do that world at all, you know?
No, I totally understand it. It's just when you're the, I'll call it the odd duck out, everyone looks at you or tries to pull you back or, keep you in the pack, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's why I was just wondering whether or not
Yeah.
you had to deal with any of that. Everyone has their own
Yeah.
uh, things that they go through. So
Yeah.
you kind of hit a shift around 2016.
Right.
You found a mentor and things started to change. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah. So I have this real vivid experience of before 2016 and after 2016. And after 2016, I built two companies to over 8 figures each per year. Sold one of them, $20 million property, financially free, like just best-selling books, tick, tick, tick. And before 2016, it was just a real struggle. I had a decent sized business. I was doing what I thought I needed to do, but it was such a struggle. And what happened in 2016 is two things. First off, my a really tough experience was that my business partner was killed in a motorcycle accident, and that put me in a really tough spot. But from that, I actually got some mentoring from a self-made billionaire who completely changed my thinking, and I write about it in the book. And what he explained to me was how to stop problem solving and start creating. I'd been so into problem solving, which is where you look at what's wrong with your life and try to get somewhere else. Basically, you look at how it is and what's wrong, and you say, "This isn't right. I'm going to try to get somewhere else." And that's the way it oriented my whole life. I go, I don't have enough money. I'm going to try to make it. This isn't right. I'm going to try to fix it. So everything was focused on what I didn't want. And he kind of sat me down, and he said, "You need to become a creator." And amongst a lot of other education, he said, what is it you want to exist? Not what do you want to get rid of? What do you want to exist? And he said to me, Chris, you got to be it to see it, And he said, look, you cannot plant seeds of scarcity and grow an abundance forest. You can't plant seeds of like, I need to fix myself. I'm not good enough and try to have something else. So that was a massive shift. And also just to have someone like that. And I said offline, about 6 years ago, he asked me to stop mentioning his name everywhere. But, it was a really amazing training, and I'm very, very grateful for getting that knowledge. And that, that's now what I pass on with my books and my podcast, and everything that I'm doing. So yeah, it was big.
So was that the genesis of your book, You're Not Broken, or was there
Yeah.
something else that inspired you to write the book?
Oh man, that was it. So the book is about me understanding the difference between, before that, Rocky, I believed I wasn't it. And I was, my bookshelf looks, like yours, full of books. I didn't think I had enough knowledge. I thought I was from the wrong part of the world. I thought that I was ADHD, couldn't focus. I had all sorts of things um, that in my head I needed to change in order for me to be successful. So I was meditating, doing chanting, changing my diet, working long hours, doing everything I could to escape it. And amongst many things, one thing he said to me is, he goes, you're super conscious, your consciousness creating your reality. And I'd never heard this word before. I was like, super conscious? Like, what does that mean? He goes, you're actually super conscious. He goes, you're orienting to your life and focusing in your life in a way where you think you're this. You think you're just this person with a name from this part of the world and this experience and this upbringing. He said, but that's just one aspect of your consciousness. He said, you can also be this. And it just blew me away to go. He goes, you can, whenever you want, let go of who you've been and create something new. And he goes, you need to stop being a chaser of what you want. You need to start being it. And he taught me some meditation and things. So I put all of that into practice. So I know I'm answering this a long way, but I put all that into practice, and I built my digital marketing school. So I created a school for digital marketing. And in 2019, when I put a CEO in that company, we were doing at that time about $8 or $9 million a year. And I put a CEO in place, and I thought, what I want to do is now teach everything that I'd learned in those 3 or 4 years to make all of the changes, all the mindset shifts, everything he taught me. And so I put that in the book, You're Not Broken, which is to teach people like me who believe that there's all these things that have been labeled that they need to change, that actually that's who you are. And you stop trying to change it, and you're going to be able to create what you want, just the way you are.
It's funny because we're the ones who labeled ourselves. It's not somebody else, right?
Yeah, we allow the label. Yeah.
We allow the label. So what exactly does super consciousness mean?
I know. It's a good question. I know. I get that question all the time. And so we have a self-conscious, which might be referred to as ego, thinking mind, this part of us. And by the way, we're trying to label an unlabelable thing, right? Trying to define an undefinable thing. So it's undefinable, but here's how I was explained: is we have self-conscious, which knows who we are, knows what a good life is, thinking, rational, ego mind. Then we have an unconscious or subconscious. This is the domain of feelings, looks after the body, and it's based in fear. So it wants your body to not die. So we have a self-conscious that wants a good life, and an unconscious that just wants a long life. And these two are at a battle. But we have a third level of mind, and you might call it infinite mind, you might call it a higher consciousness, you might call it genius, might call it inspiration. But we have this other mind. And this other mind is where our intuition, our genius, our insights live. And in that place, we're not a body, and we're not an individual. We don't have limitations. We're just ideas. And what I was explained was, if you can go into a different level of thinking and live in your superconscious mind, you create without limitation. You create, a $5 million a month business just because it's fun. It doesn't mean anything. Whereas if you create it from down here, it means so much. Oh, I'm better than others. I'm better than I used to be, or I'm this or I'm that. And so there's so much constant battle and rattle in our mind if we're down here living in the self-conscious or the subconscious mind. But if we rise up and out of it, you just create it and it's just fun. And that's one thing he said, is your business isn't going to change you. You change you, and then your business is a reflection of how you've changed. It's just a fun game that you're playing. It's nothing serious. He got me out of, because I was so serious. I was like, when I make the money, I'm going to be this. I'm going to give it to people. I'm going to save others. And he was like, you can't save other people. You can't do this. It's not about that. They got their own journey, and it was just this whole shift into a higher mind. So superconscious is your higher intelligence. It's your inspiration. It's your genius. It's a place where no problems exist. It's probably at a brain frequency of delta or gamma, where you're out of your thinking logical mind. If we were to try to describe it, we've all been in that place of flow before.
So I invented a word not long ago that I think literally describes what you're talking about. And the
Brilliant.
word was Figo. And
Mm-hmm.
it is that back and forth that most of us live in between fear and ego. And being stuck between, I'm scared, I can't do it. Oh, I'm so great. No, I'm not so great. And it's, you're stuck between that conscious subconscious mind, right?
Right.
And when that battle goes back and forth, you know what you don't do? You don't become super conscious. You don't let go of that battle that's constantly going on and take that next step up.
True.
So, how do we let go of that and become super conscious?
Well, it's through education. I think the first thing to understand is that that battle's not a problem. The subconscious or unconscious has a goal to keep you alive. In order to keep you alive, it wants to do things that it's always done. And it uses the emotion of fear whenever you're doing something that it hasn't already done. And I'll explain why this happens. So once you understand why, you can let it go much easier. If you were an unconscious and you had one goal, which was to make sure that the body and the system survived so it could reproduce itself, that seems like a good thing. What you would want to do is only do things and only go to places that you've already been. Because if you've already done things and gone to places, you know you will survive it for sure. Right? So if you know you're going to survive, why try something new if your only goal is to survive? So what it does is it looks to its parents, it looks to its coding, it looks to its emotions, and we have 7 generations of emotional patterning in our system, and says, whatever has been survived, I'm going to keep doing that. And so that's the first thing to understand. It's not against you. It's actually for us and our species to have an unconscious that doesn't want anything to be new. So that's the first piece of understanding, is it's not against you. Then the second thing is to understand that we have this self-conscious. And actually our self-conscious is made up all sorts of ideas of what a good life is. Right, depending if you come from, if you grow up in India versus growing up in the States, or if you're from India living in the States, if you're from New Zealand, if you're in Australia, whatever your unconscious says that is a good life is completely made up. Whether you live in the African, we take people out to Africa and go on safari and these amazing wildlife adventures, and you see out there they don't have the same what is a good life. Whereas if we live in a capitalist country, or if you live out in the woods, or just I want everyone listening to get that there is no definition of a good life except your own definition. You are the one that's done it. And so the first thing, the reason why I say education is understand that the idea of a good life is made up, and your unconscious is there to ensure that you keep doing things the same anyway. And most of the time, these two parts of us are completely out of rapport, because one part of us typically says a good life is going to be different to what I've always had. And then the other part says, but we just want to stay alive, so we just want to keep creating what we've always had. So what it normally does is it lets you dream about what you want, but never actually have it. So it lets you dream, you go towards it, and then they come back and towards it and come back. And then it's very clever. It then gets all of us to focus, well, there must be something wrong with us, why we keep doing this. I'm going to go and try to change this thing and these fears and these worries. I'm going to go to therapy for the next 15, 20 years. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to run out to the woods and do ayahuasca or chase psilocybin mushrooms. I got to do something to change. And so the first thing is to understand that there is all created for us, and it's not something you need to engage in. As I was explaining, we need to rise to a different level of mind. And the first place to do that is, and actually I can take you through a small example of how it works. So so if you like, I just want you to think about a big dream that you have. You don't have to share the big dream or anything with the listeners. And none of the listeners, you can do this too. So think about a big dream, but also think about a dilemma that's going on for you right now. Just Rocky and just everyone else listening, just a dilemma, just something, gosh, I'm that client or that person or this thing, or why do I keep, eating that food or whatever it is, right? And so now just have those things in your mind, and just, unless you're driving, of course, close your eyes. And I just want you to imagine this, just with your eyes closed. I'll do it too. And just imagine that you're a being without a past. So just imagine you're a consciousness with no past. Like, you have no past. Just imagine you have no past. Like, it's not true, obviously. Just imagine it melts away. You close the door on your past and you hang a mirror on the door so you could only see the future. Just imagine you have no past. And then as you imagine you have no past, just notice, how do you relate to that dilemma? And how do you relate to the big dream if you're a being with no past?
The dilemma seems almost irrelevant,
Yeah,
right? And the
right.
dream seems like possible.
100%. And so most of us live in the present moment as though it's the most recent version of who we've been. The shift to being a creator is that the present moment is the earliest version of who you're becoming. And so the shift is learning as much as, and we got processes to help live like that, to live as though you're without a past. Because literally, the past doesn't exist physically, it only exists mentally and emotionally, as a way to ensure that we don't go and make mistakes, or find ourselves in situations we can't survive. So the key is, to summarize it, the key is to learn to live without a past. That's the key.
To let go of it. You mentioned psychedelics. We've had a lot of guests and people
Oh,
come
yeah.
on in the past to talk about maybe how they can help you let go of all of that. For some people, it becomes difficult. Um, is that what you've seen, or you haven't delved into that at all? I just only brought it up since you mentioned it.
Yeah. Well, great question. What I've found with psychedelics, along with meditation and many modalities, is the modality themselves are fantastic. How we approach the modality or the psychedelic changes how they work. So what I mean is, if someone walks into therapy with the idea that therapy is going to fix them, heal them, or improve them, and take therapy, change it to psychedelic, change it to meditation. If our consciousness walks into that saying, I'm going to go to that because I need to change, the intent is to change ourselves. So here's what happens is, the person will go to this therapy, they'll have MDMA therapy or psychedelics, or they'll go to the wilds of Peru and do ayahuasca or sweat therapy, or they'll do chanting, breath work, meditation, NLP, hypnosis, Ho'oponopono, EDMR, EFT. They'll change their diet, whatever it is, and it will work. However, what happens is, underneath, they've taught their consciousness, there's something I must fix about myself. So it works, but then the consciousness has got this instruction to find the next thing, and then find the next thing, and find the next thing. And what you find with most people off to do ayahuasca and off to do all of those things is that they have a pattern. Every 1 year, every 2 years, every 5 years, they need the next thing. They go on to therapy for 10 years. They go back to the same. They never actually escape it. And so they don't escape it because of the instruction of I must fix myself. So they have to keep going back. And when you sit with them, you wonder, you ask, so have you created what you want in their life? They most of the time only talk about how they've let go of so much. So what's actually changed? And usually what I've found is most people they're just racing to the next thing. So the modalities work when someone does something different. And that is when they approach their life like an artist or a creator. And if they approach their life like they have a blank page, and they say, what would be a really fun masterpiece creation? A new home, a new relationship, a new this, a new that. And they decide what they're going to create. And then as they go about creating it, they notice a part of them not allowing it to happen. And as they notice that part of it, then they use a modality to let go. So there's a very distinct difference, because if you're creating something, say you're creating a charity or an amazing movement or a business that you care about or a new family, if you're creating something and in your act of creating, you come up against resistance and then you let go of the resistance, that which you're creating is what's left. If you're just wallowing in, I need to change myself, and you go to change yourself, the only thing left is this idea that you must change yourself. And that distinction and understanding the difference between creating and problem solving is everything that I teach.
And so we still have to let go, but we've got to let go with an idea of the future self and focus more on the future self than on the letting go and the problems of the past and the things that are holding us back. Having that bigger vision, I think, is what drives people forward. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. You've got to have the big vision of what you want for you. Now, does it have to be a big vision? What I mean by that is not everybody wants to create $1 billion company, right? Maybe they don't want to create a charity. Maybe they just want to live a good life. And is that okay too? Or do they have to have this massive, big dream?
We're all here to be creators and to create what's in our heart or in our field or in our mind to create something. And so we have a training called the Simple Life Plan. And it's so easy a way to, step into it. So really quickly, it's based on a few different questions. The first assumption is that we're here to experience around about 100 odd years with this name and this body, and then something's going to happen. We're going to go somewhere else, maybe. Who knows? So that's up to your own beliefs. But we all can agree that we've got about 100 years in this body, and the goal is to make that as much of a good life as possible, right? So that's the goal. Now, what makes something a good life is a really good question, but the answer is it's how you feel about it. And it's funny because this training actually came out of the big theme of your podcast, actually. So I'll just double back for a sec. 2 years ago, I sold my company, made more money than I can spend in a lifetime, started playing a bunch of golf, hanging out with retired people, and paid off all my house.
How long did that last?
Yeah, it's 5 months. I think it's 5 or 6, not long. I bought Lamborghini, paid off their houses. Did what I'd always wanted to do. Went on a trip to Africa, and chased around some lions and took photos of amazing African wildlife. I just did some cool stuff. And I was contemplating, because I was really, I wasn't super happy, as you would expect. I didn't have purpose. So I started asking these questions, what is a good life? And I was like, well, I've got, I was in my 30s, I've got at least 70 years here to experience this. And the idea of 70 years with nothing to really do, anymore, was like, holy crap. So I go, okay, I've got that long and I'm going to have this experience. What makes a good one? And I came to this conclusion, is that what makes a good one is how you feel about it. Doesn't matter what you do, it's how you feel about it. And what I'd noticed is what I was missing was this feeling of having a purpose. Like before I had a purpose, it was to build companies, to do. I had it. So it was. So I want listeners to get this: is what makes a good life is how you feel about it. If you write down simply what is it that I want to feel, I want to feel purpose and fulfillment and love and joy and contribution, and you write those down. The next question is asking yourself, and what allows me to feel those things? And so, what creates a good life is this, and what allows me to feel those things? Is it building a business? Is it spending time with your family? And that answers your question. So, if a listener there goes, what means a good life is what makes a good life is how I feel about it, and how I like to feel is flow and chilled out and fun. And what makes me feel those things? Surfing, hanging out with my family, working at the local cafe because I just want to have chilled life. Well, then that's your creation. That's what you get to go to. Someone else goes, what makes me feel good is doing something that is hard, reaching the top of a mountain, impressing upon the world something that I think they were going to have a different set of instructions. But both of those creations are completely perfect for that individual. I think most of us don't take the time to go, what do we like to feel? And so back to your point, I wouldn't like to build $1 billion company. I wouldn't like it. I really, really enjoy. Right now, I've got a good company. I've got about 60 staff. I know everyone by name. We do a few $1 million a month in sales. I work 5 hours a day. I like 5 hours a day. If I do less than that, I start to go a bit crazy. I have 5 hours a day. Play golf a couple times a week. Like I've got it where I want it. If I was to then go to that next level, like a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, and you see what they needed to do, that's not what I want to do. That to me, that's close to the job that I left 15 years ago than it is what I want to create. So I think that the answer is that, creating your life is the goal, and you just must start with some of these basic ideas of what I shared. Yeah.
And I think that's the key, is understanding what you want, what works
Yeah.
for you, and being able to define it, test it, ensure that it truly is. So in your case, you're like, 5 hours is my number. And
Yeah.
hey, this is enough. This works for me. Less isn't good. More isn't good. And it's testing and dialing that down to understanding that.
Mm.
And I know there's a lot of parts of my life where I've dialed that down. I'm okay with this. I'm not okay with that. I don't want to deal with this. So, like, when it comes to my business, I'm not going to scale it because I don't want to. I don't want to have to deal with the employee part of it. It's just
Yeah.
not my thing, and I'm okay with that. And
Yeah.
so I've defined, hey, this is enough. This is good. This works for me, and I'm happy with it. And
Yeah.
I don't feel bad that I don't have $1 billion business, because
Yeah.
I realize what I would have to pay for that in the price of
Right.
life, and it's not my thing.
Right. And
So,
it's really, really impressive, Rocky, to hear others hear you say that. It is so hard to just admit that you don't want what the entrepreneur community defines as success. I remember really battling with the fact that I do not actually want that. And it was like I wanted to be financially free. I really wanted that so bad. And so I did whatever it took to build the companies and save my butt, put it into real estate and other businesses and investments, and to create my net worth so I do not ever have to again. And that was important to me. But then once I got it, there wasn't a need to go further. I'd much prefer to give things away than have to deal with, trying to make it a company. Yeah. So it's
and
good.
I think that's the one question that I notice a lot of people struggle with, is how much is enough?
Yeah.
And I
That's
think it's
a
a
good
question a
question.
lot of people get wrong, have never done the math for,
7
and,
million.
you
7
know,
million.
7 million.
7 million. Okay, because I did this thing. I can tell you, and we're 7 million. Here's why. Here's how it goes. Okay. I sat with this, Rocky, right in the middle of like build my bit. What's enough? And I said, and I wrote down, said 7 million. Here's how it works out. And I don't know what the prices of houses are where the listeners are, but where I'm from, A $3 million house is a really good house. It's on the water in Gold Coast, which is like the Miami of Australia. So I was like, $3 million for a house. I wanted to have $2 million sitting uh, in stocks and funds, paying me 8 to 10%. So I get 200 grand a year in passive income for the rest of my life. That was five. $1 million on cars and household stuff and everything else, and $1 million for a holiday home. That was my seven. $1 million holiday home, $1 million on stuff, 2 million on in an investment, paying me 200K every single year passive, and then $3 million my house paid off. That was my goal. That was it. And so I recommend everyone figures out their number, because I see so many people have no idea what their number is, no idea what, like, if someone walks up to you and wants to buy your business, what is the number that's your walkaway price? Like, what are you doing this for? Otherwise, you can find people just in this never ending loop or search of, if you don't, what is it? If you don't have a definite name, it doesn't matter which road to take, right? If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which road you take. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but that was my number, and I highly recommend everyone get a number.
So here's my question then. What are the biggest struggles that you've seen people encounter as they try to implement this?
Number one is that they have to redefine their approach to money creating. Meaning they need to realize that when you build something, like when you build a business, you don't get paid every hour you put in. So if I go to a job, doesn't matter what job it is, at the end of putting in my time, whether that's a week or 2 weeks or a month, I get a certain amount of money back, and it's calculated this much time in, this much money out. When it comes to building a business, that's not the case. You can put in 100 hours and get zero, because it's based on performance. And so that really rattles a lot of people. They're like, Chris, I've been putting money into this and time into this, and it's been 3 months. I've got nothing out of it. And so understanding the time delay of building an asset is a really big mindset shift. A lot of people go get a job, pay some six figures, and then they go try to start a business, and they're so used to having that $10,000 each month come in, and it doesn't come in. So that's really important, is to understand that is a mess. I see that as a massive challenge. The second is most people do not like the idea of selling. And so they don't want to sell. And they try to do every way to avoid the fact that they need to sell something to have a business. They try everything. They try hiring. They try telling themselves that they're not a salesperson. But unfortunately, they need to. The third thing is, I see a massive problem for those that actually do get started, is lifestyle creep. Meaning they start making a little bit more, and all of a sudden their expenses have risen. And so, for me, I was still driving a $2,000 car, and my companies were doing 14 million a year. And people would laugh at me when I turn up to meetings because I had this old car, but I was the one laughing because I was putting 90% of everything that I earned into properties, into managed funds. I was just putting it all away because I had a different goal, a different objective. And so I see lifestyle creep being a massive problem. And, I know this, so preaching to the choir, but the compound interest, you'll look back and you will kick yourself of how compound interest work, so spending it too early. And then on the other side of that is understanding how bad compounding interest is if you start using credit the wrong way. You can get yourself, like, buying today and then paying it off tomorrow with interest is just going to kill you. So it really, really is. So I help a lot of people to say the number one thing you got to do is you've got to find a way to make more money than you'll typically have in a job. I was like, if you just trade time for money, it's going to be very difficult for you to get to where you want fast. So I say the first thing is you need to increase that. You need to create an asset. You need to create something that makes more money than you just can make with your time. Buy a business, start a business, do something that means instead of just earning off your time, you can earn off other people's time with technology. Second, invest it. It's such a simple system. I'm sure you teach something very similar. Is that it's simple, but people just get in their own way. So, anyway, those are some thoughts I had about why they're in their own way.
I think this is the perfect time to talk about profit first,
Oh
because
yeah, see the book behind you.
most business owners, no matter what their revenue, they don't actually have a reasonable profit, and they can't remove the profit from their company. You use profit first. How has it helped you?
Yeah, well, it's yeah. So I'll just bring the listeners in. So before we jumped on, I said, that book behind you, Profit First, it really, really, really helped me, and found out obviously that this is a thing that you're really into. So Profit First changed the way I did business. So I think it was maybe 2017 or 18. My wife and I are realizing that we're making a lot of revenue, and how should we deal with this? And so we got the audio. I believe it was introduced to me from Genius Network, and we got the audio. And I remember going on this really long drive with my wife, and I remember it was one of those, oh shoot, but a different word, like holy moly moment where we actually turned it off. We pulled over the side of the road, and I just said, look, this is what we need to do. We need to have accounts set up this way. We need to be paying ourselves first rather than paying everyone else. Like, we need to restructure everything. So we did that back then. And we've been doing the paying ourselves first for however long it is, 6-7 years now. And it has made a massive difference. And most entrepreneurs and business owners aren't taught about how money should work. And if you're not getting a good ROI in your business for all the risk and everything else that you have to do, like even when I pay my profit share and stuff, I already taken my piece out, like my ROI, like what is as your investment, whatever money and time you had to put in, your ROI should be taken out before everything else. It just has to. Otherwise, you're just going to find yourself in a place you start resenting your business. And man, business is way too hard for it not to be making you above normal profits compared to a job. So anyway, I highly, it's on my top 10 book list. I send it. I have all sorts of people read it. I think it's a fantastic way to think about your money and your accounting and your business. Yeah.
How has Genius Network helped you out?
It was good. I was only there for a year. Yeah, it was good. I haven't been there for
Oh,
years.
so it was a short time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was living in the States, and when I was over there, it was good. But when you got to travel 15 hours to get to we stopped going.
So we have a lot of business owners, who listen, and I think they face a ton of struggles too.
Yeah,
And a lot of it probably comes back to mindset. It comes back to fear and ego. It comes back to
yeah.
that. What can they do to kind of apply the things that you're talking about, and what should they be thinking about in regards to their business challenges and how they can achieve the ability to have their business have a good return on investment?
Well, I mean, it's a big question, isn't it? State the obvious. It's a big question. I think that there's some things that every business owner should really consider as very, very important. And most of us who have started a business, we fall into it maybe because we're good at it. In the E-Myth, they talk about the entrepreneurial seizure moment. We go, I'm going to just go from being good at being the technician into being an entrepreneur. And so I think that the most important thing is to actually understand that you're now doing something different than just having a job, and that you're there to build a business. And so the first place is a business is a profitable enterprise that works without you. So defining that first,
And
right?
I think it works without you is the
Yes,
key.
the business is the product. So most people will think that their product is the product, but when you're an entrepreneur, the business is the product because you may choose to sell it at some point. So a profitable enterprise that works without you, that's your goal. So defining the goal is the first objective. I'm going to create a profitable enterprise that works without me. Okay, so what is this enterprise supposed to do? Well, it's a group of people and technology that is solving a problem and or giving solutions to another group of people. That's all it is. So you think about it really simply, and to go, okay, great, that's what I'm creating. And so what I must do is organize this group of people or myself, if I'm the only person, to solve a problem for them. And so starting with the end in mind of what it is so important. So that would be my first, is it's profitable enterprise that works without you. Second, what is your number? What are you creating? What is your goal? Like, what are you here to do? Is it like me? Is it 7 million? Is it more? Is it less? What is the number that is going to be worth it at the end that you actually have the victory? Because it doesn't need to be a lifetime thing. Like when I sold my company, it was one of the best moments ever. Sold it, huge check in my bank account, paid everything. Oh, it was brilliant. So what is your number? What are you actually, creating it for? And then third is to really own that identity, you know, really be it that you're an entrepreneur now. You're not a plumber that became a business owner or a financial planner. You are an entrepreneur. And what entrepreneur does is very, very, very different to what a technician or employee does. Is we build businesses. What was the question? I hope I answered the question.
Well, it was just the mindsets and the beliefs that the business owner needs
Yeah.
to get out of the struggle that they're in and to be
Yeah.
able to use the things that you're teaching or
Mm.
just from what you've learned to be able to get ahead like that.
Mm. I guess listen to a podcast like this is a very good place to be surrounded. So highly recommend that, by the way. But just know that businesses fail, entrepreneurs don't, and that's a really important thing. Businesses fail, entrepreneurs don't. If you're listening to this and you're in struggle, is you've got gained a lot of skills, you've got a lot of expertise, and it is important to consider that you're in the right opportunity or not. Now, a lot of times, the grass is greenest where you water it, and you need to just stay focused on what it is that you do have. But really know that is that the entrepreneurial journey, what am I on? I must be on like my 15th or 16th different company. Is it's all going to come together once you get all the right skills. And so the predictable path is this: the first skill that an entrepreneur must understand is how to create a message to market match. So how do I get a message and get it to market? How do I get that? The second is how do I create an MVP, a minimum viable product? So you got to learn that skill. The next skill is you got to learn how to sell it. Like, how do I actually sell it? The next skill is how do I promote it? How do I market? The next skill is how do I build operations and team? The next skill is how do I lead? The next skill is how do I invest my money? And then the final skill is what to do when I've got all the money. And so if you think about an entrepreneur in those segments, right, that it's about message to market, it's about minimum viable product, it's about learning to sell, it's about learning to market, it's about learning to create operations, it's about learning to lead, it's about learning to invest. If you think about what you're doing, is entrepreneurs never fail, businesses do. And so it's okay that you chose a business. You just go back to the beginning and you start again. And if you know your number and you know what you're doing and you know that business is quite a simple thing, then it's about, okay, how do I stack all the skills in the right order so that I can end up getting that victory? Keep that victory in your mind of, for me, it was the house paid off, like what I said before, that was my victory. And if you keep that creation in your mind, then, a lot of the pain of making it happen won't be so bad.
Now that you've been able to achieve the financial success, you've kind of answered the question, now what, right? You've decided
Yeah.
what you want to do. Are there some ahas or some surprises that came at this stage of life that you're like, wow, I didn't realize that it was going to be like this, or this was possible, or something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. So I thought that when I was coming through my journey and I saw people who had already made it, I always wondered why they still needed to have businesses that make money. And now on the other side of that journey, I'm not making businesses for me anymore, but they still need to make money. And so really, like, I would judge at the beginning, I'd really judge that, Rocky. Be like, well, if you're so successful, why does your business still, why do you still sell? Why does it need to make money? And what I realized is that a business, the health of a business is that it makes money. And if you really want to create a movement or help a lot of people, the best way to do it is in a business structure. So there's money to spend on advertising and staff and all of the things you need to spend on. And so I really understand now conscious capitalism. And that was something I wasn't expecting at all would happen. I thought, I would finish and then I would just donate my time and, I would be, it wouldn't be about making money and it wouldn't matter. But actually, all those skills really do matter, and it still needs to make money. It's just not necessarily that the money needs to flow to me. It just needs to work. So that really surprised me. So that was big. And then the other thing that really surprised me was how full circle it is. That everything that was important to me as a kid is now what is important to me again. Like, for example, growing up, I was obsessed about basketball. I ended up playing for New Zealand and, and so now I'm coaching a basketball team and I'm spending all this money hiring basketball courts for this team and buying them uniform, like I'm just doing and so the person out there who's considering selling their business or knows there's a long road ahead, just know that when you do get that financial freedom and you do it, like it's really worth it. That I didn't really know that's who I would be. So it's a good question. I need to
Sometimes
ponder it.
you have to feel it. You have to live it,
Mm,
Otherwise, people don't talk about like that part of it, right?
true. I've never been asked it before.
And no
Yeah.
one's going to ask it, right? They're all like, "How do I make more money?" It's like, "Yeah, that's nice, but that's not going to solve your problem. It's not going to solve your bigger problem. It'll solve your small problem,
Well,
but
I mean, I got a business mentor who's with hundreds of millions, and it's always got challenges going on, always. And I was talking to my wife just this week about him and going, man, I really feel for this guy, but I don't. All I can tell is that money hasn't really helped, and so it's a good thing to go and get it because life's a lot of fun when you don't have the stress of needing to go and get it. But it doesn't mean that everything else is put together. That's for sure.
no, but and it kind of comes back to what you said earlier. Like, my business serves my life, and
Right.
I know how much is enough and how much is too much. But it keeps me active, it keeps me engaged, it keeps me focused, and it allows me to do all the other stuff that I want to do. And it's fun. And if I didn't have this, I don't think my days would be as enjoyable. I don't think I would
Mm,
have as much meaning and purpose and giving
mm,
back and so forth. So it's that
mm.
you got to figure out for you what works,
Yeah.
and it's testing and learning and
Yeah.
answering the question, how much is
Yeah.
enough and what does life look like
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's built on your terms? Because here's the thing, if you've got lots of money and your life still sucks, the only problem is the reflection in the mirror. You're
Yeah.
your worst enemy. So make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a big lesson is that I think it was Frank Kern that I learned this from originally was that to create your ideal average week. and to write down, okay, what is your ideal average week? And it really slapped me in the face when I did sell my company, and all of a sudden I didn't have these people that I got to interact with every day, and I didn't have it anymore. And I was out there playing golf with people twice my age going, okay, is this it? How do I suffer through this for another 50 years? Pretty much was the thought process in my head. And so I realized that I didn't want to go back to, 8-10 hours a day, because I didn't have the big victory. So it wasn't worth doing that. There wasn't the thing at the end that I needed. But at the same time, I didn't want to just do golf, And so, like, I'm chatting to you now. I got up early, got to the office, still, got here, still have an office, do this podcast. And I've got, some coach calls, some other things for the next few hours. And then I'm off to play golf in the afternoon, So life's as I choose it. And I really want to inspire as many people to go for that, is to figure out that number first, do what you need to do to get your number. Like, absolutely. I would never, ever do it any other way, because there is a lot of people that get to our position, Rocky, and they say, oh, just 4-hour work week, but they never did that, like they never did that themselves. And so, like, I know what it's like to be on the other side, on that side. So it's okay just to know that's really, really important. But then know you are going to have to face some questions of, now, how do I set up my life? And so, maybe Rocky, maybe you've got better ways of doing it, but I always love to tell, to kind of let people know how I did it. And if they can find a better way, well, they just win.
Truth be told, Tim Ferriss works a lot more than 4 hours in a week. And that's the reality of it.
That's the reality for sure.
What's your secret to living an abundant life?
To remember how abundant life already is. And there's a moment I talk about in my book where I was sitting on a park bench, and these two older gentlemen come along, and they were kind of homeless looking, and they were fishing. And at that stage, Rocky, I had a digital marketing agency, an education company. I had 3 gyms, 2 hair salons, I don't know, a property business. I was stressed. I had a big tax bill. I just got off a plane from Singapore to Australia. I was stressed. And I realized these guys had more abundance than me. And I made a decision then. I said, I would rather have $5,000 a month profit than all this stress. And so within 2 months, I sold pretty much all of those. I gave the hair salons away. I sold the gyms at cost. Closed down an agency, didn't make any money, just closed it, got rid of stuff, and realized that I could have abundance now. And so my secret, if there was one, is to realize how easy it is to have abundance in 2024, with everything we have. And so that would be the secret, is you don't have to chase it. It's already here. You can just have it.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
That you can create what you want without fixing yourself.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for checking out this unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can find the full episode along with all the back episodes at richersoul.com. This podcast is brought to you by Profit Comes First, where we help business owners to have a more profitable and growing business so they can live the life of their dreams. Check that out as well wherever you listen to all this content.